Welcome back everyone to the third video in this series, and in this video we'll be creating our very first Chainlit chat application where we will see how we can type into the chat bar and the LLM will answer it for us, and we'll be able to see that on the chat bar, right? So to do that, first we're going to go ahead and create our virtual environment. Just remember, anything you want to do in Python, you should always do it in the virtual environment. And you're going to name it something like GPT clone, or you can also name it your LocaLM, doesn't really matter. We're going to call it LocaLM for our use case. It's going to take some time to create the virtual environment. Alright, it's done. Now we're going to activate that virtual environment first of all. And for that, we'll just simply head over to that directory and activate and just run the activate button. The activate script. And this will activate our local environment. You can virtual environment. You can even see that in the corner in the left side. You can see in the bracket. This indicates that our virtual environment has been activated. Now that it's activated, we're going to go ahead and install our requirements txt. Now, in the requirements, you can see that we have these are the requirements that we need to install. I'm going to remove pip, right? So we have Chainlit, ollama, and SQL for basically this is for our database we'll be making for storing of all of our chat history, and these are also the libraries related to that database. Alright, now we can go ahead and install pip, install our requirements, and this will take up a lot of time, so I'm gonna meet you again once it's done installing. Welcome back everyone. So we are done with our installation. Took some not too much time, but that's because I already had these different libraries in my system, so it only used those cached libraries to install and it did not download anything. That's why for you it might take at least 2-3 minutes, but once it's done we can clear the screen and we have everything set up. Now we will need to create our very first our Python file in which we're going to write our Chainlit program or our Chainlit application, and we will see the interface running on our web application, on our browser. So yeah, so we're going to be creating our app.py, which is basically you can create this app.py anywhere, and I'm going to be creating this right inside of our virtual environment directory, and we can open it up, and once we open it up, you will need to get all these libraries here, and once you import all these libraries, we're going to be creating our ollama calling function. This function will basically call our ollama Alright, so this function is going to this function is going to run our ollama. This function is basically going to do exactly the same thing as we do manually, which is basically going to our search bar and starting ollama from there, and then running ollama into our terminal. So instead of doing all that, we can run it through Python code like this. And this is especially beneficial if you're running it in an environment where you don't have access to the terminal, for example, your Google Colab. And I am planning a separate series to create this whole entire application in Colab, because not everyone has an access to a powerful GPU in our houses or in our systems. So in that case, we can just use Colab's internal GPU. Plus, if you have a subscription for Colab, that means you can really take use of those high power Colab GPUs to run your large language models. And the main problem that comes with Colab is that if you don't have access to the terminal, then you can't really call these. I mean, but you can still like run these commands inside of the Jupyter environment notebook anyway. But the problem is that once you run a command, you can't really, if the command is running, you can't really take help of the other shells to run other commands, because then it will be busy. Alright, so these two functions that we created just now, once you call this function, it's going to create a thread in which it will start this function, and in this function basically will create a host. The ollama's host, the AP, it will search the host at this particular local host, because this is where the ollamas in our system run, and it's going to start ollama serve. This subprocess that open basically does the exact same thing as we do in the command line, which is ollama serve, and when it runs this command, it's going to start ollama in our system in the background. So that's what these two functions are for. And I technically use this for any application that I build for. Now, alright, anyway, once we are done with these two, let's create our very first Chainlit web application. So there are two functions that are basically required or are used when you want to create your chat interface in Chainlit. The first is onChat start, and the other one is onMessage. So when you run this application, onChat start will display the first thing that you'll see over there, and onMessage will execute every time you are running your message. So let's start with cl.on chat start. We're going to use this decorator. CL is entirely decorator based, so basically any function that you're building, you'll need to use the decorator for the functionality of that function to be taken over by that decorator function. So when we are starting our Chainlit application, the first thing that we obviously want to do is start our ollama to be running in the background, so that we can use that now this will start our session, and in the user session, it's going to set a variable of chat history, of name chat history, and it's going to use an empty list for that. Now let's save this and run our ollama to see what happens. I mean, run our Chainlit application to find what we see on our screen. So after we save our app.py, we're going to go to the terminal again, and we can start with Chainlit. We can start with this command, chainlit run app.py. Make sure you are in the directory where you have created the app.py your Python file, and also that your virtual environment is running. So once you do this and hit enter, it's going to create your it's going to create the initialization files for the first time when you're creating when the first time you're running Chainlit application in a directory folder, in a root directory folder. It creates these Chainlit translations and Chainlit the Chainlit config files, which we will be using later for our edits. Now it's going to pop up this. If it doesn't automatically pops up your default browser, then you will need to copy this link here. Wait, where is it? Yeah, this one. Your app is available at http localhost 8000. If you copy this into any browser you have in your system and run this, it's going to run Ollama here. Now, this is our first screen. It won't do anything if you say hi, because we haven't really set any functionality for this, but you can edit this and it will rerun it. Now you can also change. These are the few things that by default come with Ollama. There's a readme. This is also created automatically as you run the command chainlit run, and here you can start a new chat, but as you can see, we have not really done any other functionality with it, so it won't do anything. And you can see the Chainlit logo in the center, and we can change this later on. I'll show you how to do it. So yeah, this is your very first chat interface. It was super easy to make. Let me show you how much code it needed. All the code that it really needed is these things. Honestly, you don't even need that many code to run this. You only need chainlit.scl, import chainlit.scl, and just on.chat. But obviously, we don't need just the screen. We don't need to just look at the screen. We also need to run our LLM in the background so that we can call it, and it can produce chat history. I mean, it can produce or generate the answers to us based on the chat history or any chat that we have done. So when on as you guys can see, the cl.onStartChat, this decorator will run this function in the beginning, and whatever you've written in this function will happen, and you'll see that on the screen. The next function that we're going to be needing to actually start talking to our LLM is on the message. Now on Now we're gonna call, we can get, so the .get gets a session variable, and .set sets a session variable. You can set it with a parameter, and this will become a session variable with this particular parameter, and you can use .get to get anything from it, from the session. So we had created a history variable so that we can store our history, and this way LLM will remember all of the past conversations so that it can answer based on those. Now in the model, like I had shown you previously in our downloading and installing Ollama tutorial, you can have multiple different models available to you, and you can run any of them that you would want to run. And for me, I'm going to be using the 2.5 0.2.5 parameter model, because my system would not go haywire if I will run it. Otherwise, it would for any other LLMs that I have. And this is our basically this is the structure of input that model takes. We have role, user, and the content of the user. This will be appended to our empty list of chat history, and we're going to create an object for a class message with our content to be nothing for now. And we're going to await cb.send. So this will send this message, but it will not have anything in it yet. This is a dummy message that we created for our actual message that we'll be replacing this one with. Now, the way we're going to be running Ollama here and getting the generating the chats from it is a streaming method. So we're not going to be just like how we see on ChatGPT when you type a message in your type a query. ChatGPT starts generating all of the text one after another because that's an autoregressive feature of LLMs, and we have that capability with all LLMs, so we don't need to generate the entire text first and then show it to the user, because it's going to take a long time for the user to be just waiting and looking at the screen, looking at a blank empty screen until the message is finally done finishing up in the background, and then until it shows up on the screen is going to take a long time. And therefore what we do is streaming of our chats of the answers that we get from the model. We can also just generate everything. That functionality is there in Ollama, but it unfortunately does not accept. If you stop streaming, let me show you this parameter here, stream equals to, and if you set it to true, it's going to stream. This is going to create a generator object, and it's going to stream one token at a time. But if you set it to false, it's going to just give you a final answer at the end after waiting for the entire answer to generate. Now, in the options section, we are going to define at which particular token should our model stop generation. And for Qwen models, it's im end. And you can also set in the option number of im end. Yeah, and you can also set in the model set in the options the number of tokens. I guess it was number of tokens. I'm not really sure, but you can search that up. If you set it to something like 1024, then the maximum number of tokens that the model will output will be 1024, and if the model generates anything more than that, it'll be cut off. So this is why I'll be using the end token. You must know the end token, the end of sentence token, or end of turn token, whatever it is of your model, to use it here in the stop key. Now, how would you know what is the end token of your model? Well, it's kind of easy if you can do it by just going on the Ollama website itself. Well, let me show it to you. Alright, so we are on the Ollama website. Now let's suppose, how did I found out about the stop token of Qwen? Well, we're going to search for Qwen model, and we are using Qwen 2.5. And in the Qwen 2.5, I was using 0.5 beta. It doesn't really matter which, because all of them are just the same models. So they all know about the same tokens. But let's suppose we go to the latest one, click on any of these, and if you go to the template, inside of the template you can see in the bottom we have all of the different. This is the entire template that the model follows inside of it, like the range of the tools, the functions, and im end for the function, and then we have role here, role user. This is why we give pass the user key with the user content. Then we have the role assistant. This is what the model will generate after this. Then we have tool calling, and we have multiple im ends and multiple im star. But these are for the tools, right? Role tool. If the role is tool. Then we have finally in here at the end you can see that this is a system prompt, This is the user prompt, and this is the assistant. So the model will start generating after this assistant if it's not using the other tools and etc. Now, in the response, at the end we have this im end. This is its final token. This is how I know that it's going to end its response at im end, and this is why I'm using the im end token for my stop generation, my stop stop key. Well, after this, we can create a loop object for our async. So this is after we create an async IO get event loop object. This object will be basically this in this object we're going to be passing in the generate chunk function, this function, and it's going to loop through it in an asynchronous manner, in an asynchronous fashion. And because this, as we loop through this function, it's going to create that return. It's returning ollama chat, ollama.chat, where the stream is true. So it's going to return each time we call this. It's going to return a token, the next token, until it stops its execution. Now we create a variable called assistant response, which is going to be empty. This will contain the string of the response that we're getting from assistant. Now from the chunk, we are going to get the message right? So we're going to get the content from the message from this stream. And if we have the content, we have assistant response plus equals to content. And so the CB object that we created earlier with the message, we're going to stream the token from the content that we get. Now the assistant response is, we're only going to stream the content, but the assistant response is there so that we can build our chat history. That's why we created the assistant response variable, because we're gonna then pass this to our chat history list. Let me just copy this from here. We can edit it. Assistant, and the content is assistant response. All right. So this is our entire setup for our on message. So every time you're gonna send a message in Streamlit, sorry, in Chainlit, it's going to run this function, and in this function when you pass the message, we get the chat history from every time. It's going to get the chat history variable from the session variable, and then we have selected our model here, and chat history.append. We're going to append this to our chat history, which is the user query. Then we will send that user query into the ollama chat right here, chat history. We're going to send it that chat history. It's going to generate the final assistant output and we're going to stop it at IMN token, and then that's where we're looping through it one by one until there are no more chats coming. So after this, we have one more thing to do, which is await cb.update, because initially we start the message for the assistant with nothing, and it's going to send this, which is nothing, until the messages will start coming, and that's when we are going to do cb.update, right? And this is all running in an asynchronous fashion, so any code can run at any time. Now let us Alright, so we're done. Now let us try running this and see the results. Let me stop this. And let's start our Chainlit application again. Alright, now this is the moment of the truth. Let's give it a query and see if the results come or not. I've set it high, and in initial run it's going to take some time to load the model. Let's see if we don't have run into any problem, and you can check that in here in the terminal. We're just going to wait for the queries to start generating. The answers to start generating. Yep, there we go. How can I assist you today? Feel free to ask me any questions, or let me know if there's anything specific you'd like to discuss. What is it might not know it obviously whether today, but let's see what I'm sorry, but I don't have access to real-time weather information. The current date and time are not recorded in my database for current conditions for the most accurate and up-to-date information. Well, let's see if it remembers the chat history or not. So my name is, let me give my name Syrian, and so I'm glad we can chat together. How can I assist you today? Is there anything specific you'd like to discuss? And let me ask you my name. What is my name? Your name is a Syrian, very personal and unique name, possibly, and you can see that it's remembering the history, and it is streaming the chat, and it's pretty fast enough. My computer doesn't even have a graphics card. It's all running on CPU, but that's why I'm running a very small 500 million parameter model, and it's just amazing what you can do today with very small LLMs. This is crazy. Who would have thought 10 years from now that you can be running something like a local assistant in your computer, in a computer that doesn't even have high specs. And yeah, this is our pretty much it for this video, where we learn how to build our, and you can see how it didn't take too much code. The entire logic of this code just relies here, is simply in cl.onMessage, because every time you send a message, this is the function being called, and it generates the output in a loop, in a stream, and it appends that in the history. So the history is being built upon, and we set it inside of our session variable, and basically that's it. That's all that is happening. And we have our very own interface right here, but there's one problem. Once you end this chat, your history will not be stored. So once you get out of this application, I don't think restarting it, refreshing it would help. Well, I restarted it. Let me check. Hello, and what is my name? As an artificial, I'm simply called Quinn. It's because it's because of the quantization and very small parameter count, it's not going to give a very good response. It's giving me its own name. Let me ask it, do you know my name? Yes, I do. You can always tell me name whenever you want to continue. Okay, so it doesn't know my name anymore because it doesn't remember that conversation anymore, because every time we'll refresh it or restart it or start this whole Chainlit app again, it's going to forget everything that we had talked about previously. All the previous conversation is gone. So in the next video, we're going to see how we can create that. We can create a chat history. However, the important thing to note here is that we cannot create a chat history directly. It will not work. What we need to do is that we will need to create a database, an SQL database, because Chainlit stores the chat history in databases. In different, there are various different databases, but in our case, we're going to be using a local database. We're going to create that database in our computer, and Chainlit is going to use that database to save everything in it, and yeah, it's going to call the chats from that database. And but before that, we'll also have to build an authentication page where we can sign in our user. So that's what we're going to be creating in our next video, not the database. We'll do it later. The first thing comes before that is to create an authentication page where we will have our user authentication, where the user will have a page to sign in, so that we can create a personalized session for each user, and so each session will store the particular chat history for that particular user only. So that's pretty much it for this tutorial. I hope you guys learned, and I hope it worked for you, because I don't know, in the future maybe Chainlit changes something in the library, or maybe a new update comes, and if that happens, well, it might not be too relevant for you. But I'm gonna give you all of the libraries that I'm using, that I have installed for this build, so that you can install the exact same libraries, and so at least nothing would break, no matter how far ahead in the future you're watching this video. So thank you very much, and hope to see you in the next one.